Hello, this is Eric Moore, and welcome to this evening's edition of the Town Meeting Study Committee, July 16th, 2024. This is a subcommittee meeting of the Logistics or Operations and Communications Subcommittee. Thank you for joining. My first question is, who would like to clerk tonight? I have one comment about that. I clerked for the previous two meetings, and I wrote a little script that takes the a time-coded transcript from the Zoom meeting and produces a plain text version of that. So now I have a little tool that produces a plain text version of what we all said in the meeting. So it's a nice tool. It helped me a lot in terms of writing the minutes. And so I'm happy to make a plain text transcript available to anybody who's clerking. So that said, is there anybody who would like to clerk tonight? Please. I'm happy to do it, so I will do that. And I'm going to move on to, so I'm clerking, Eric Moore. I'm going to move on to taking roll. The folks in dark are nominally the folks who are part of the subcommittee, though we all are. So Keith Bergman, would you say aye, please?
Aye.
Thank you, Keith. Hi.
Pre-
I'm sorry, Keith, you're breaking up. Okay. Katie Bresnick is not expected this evening. Kristen Haggerty, I see you online. Would you just say aye, please? I'm sorry you're on mute, but I do see you online.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
I've got to call in on my phone. The other computer isn't working.
Got it. Confirmed. Thank you. Alice Kaufman, not expected this evening. Leslie Koplow, are you on? I don't see you. We'll come back to Leslie if she joins. Eric Moore, aye. Parashar Patel expects to join about a half hour late. So noted. Eric Van Loon, Phil Swain, I see you.
Aye.
Thank you, Phil. Good evening. And Eric Van Loon is off for July. We expect Carmen after 8 if we're still on by then. Moving ahead into the agenda. And again, Shannon McAndrew, thank you for getting us set up. Moving into public comment, the normal 15 minutes, 2 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment or ask a question, please?
Not I, Eric. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, David Allen. Let's see. We do not have a quorum at the moment. One, two. So I'm going to defer discussion of available meeting minutes or approval of available meeting minutes. And if we have time when Parashar joins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be okay. So chair's comments, and Phil and Kristen Haggerty, I think you heard this from the previous meeting. So really, Keith, and Keith, are you on? Are you 508-769?
No, that's me.
Okay. So Keith seems to have dropped off. Given that we covered this material in the previous meeting for the folks that are on this call, and then this material is available in the town collateral and in the the meeting packet, I'm going to skip it unless Philip or Kristen, you have any comments just on reflection based upon the previous meeting.
I don't.
Good. Okay, cool. Moving forward. So experiences and insights from operation of town meeting. So, it's funny, right? Well, maybe not funny, but everyone on this team knows more about town meeting than I do. And so a lot of what I've been doing individually is attempting to kind of get caught up and develop a good working understanding of the elements and systems of town meeting. And so because in this particular task, we're interested in understanding what's going on in terms of preparing for town meeting, I took it upon myself to make a picture. And so I did have a chance to talk with Carmen about this, and I'll talk through it now, and I will hope that Keith can rejoin. So what goes into preparing for town meeting? These different roles, the boxes on the left, different functions, as it were. And I'll say that the takeaway is the town staff is involved everywhere, to my understanding, in town meeting, preparing for town meeting. But in terms of, arranging the meeting, hosting, the project management of scheduling hearings and supporting hearings, getting the principals sort of, so to speak, on board, and then the meeting information in terms of communicating information about meeting out to the town. Town council. So this is something I didn't know, and I'll just explain it because seems so fundamental to me now. Is that the warrant is an agenda. The warrant is a notice of what meeting is going to address, and implied in the order of articles in the warrant is a meeting agenda. It's implied, and then what we talk about, what we decide on at meeting are motions, and the relationship between an article in the warrant and the motion is that a reader of an article in the warrant should be able to reasonably anticipate what the motion corresponding to that article would be. It's not literal, but if the article is saying we want to look at options for doing something, then the motion would basically identify what one of those options would be, and that would be the thing that we'd be voting on and approving. So a key function then is that the town council, who is not an employee of the town, that the town council holds, in effect, a motion. Well, the council reviews motions individually, but also there is a motion hearing that principals of FinCom, the select board, the town manager, and so on, attend to review motions that are going to go before meeting. A select board is the gatekeeper for what goes into the warrant. The select board also hosts a certain set of hearings. So, for example, the citizen petitions might be reviewed and hearings sort of led by the select board. But also FinCom has 3 hearings that it traditionally hosts or conducts. One around town funding, one around the school committee funding, and the third around enterprise funds. And then if there are.
So, Eric,
Yeah,
the select board doesn't hold those hearings. The FinCom holds those hearings.
that's exactly. Select board holds hearings around some articles in the warrant, but as you said, you were on FinCom, right, Phil?
Yeah.
FinCom.
Yeah, that was Parashar. And
Yeah.
so FinCom holds the ones on the financially related articles,
Exactly.
but that's the bulk of it. It's the school articles,
Yeah.
the town budget, and the enterprise funds.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Different article sponsors. It might be the school committee. It might be a town department. Are responsible for writing the article text, authoring the motion as well, for providing article collateral, and for example, the planning board, also presenting the motion at town meeting. And again, there are statutory things going on. So the planning board also for its hearings is responsible for hosting for its articles, is also responsible for hosting a hearing. The clerk, in the context of preparing for town meeting, I believe that the primary function of the clerk is really, composing the warrant and getting it out, or, distributing a copy of the warrant with that to the town, or all of the voters in town, all of the voting households in town. And with that as well, I guess they're also distributing the town report, though I think it's time to be part of town meeting, but not time to be synchronous with town meeting, but not part of town meeting per se. But I think about the town report, which is massive, as again collateral to town meeting. The FinCom. So FinCom, as you said, is hosting 3 different hearings traditionally, but also FinCom. You're going to correct me, Phil, but FinCom is intended to basically make recommendations on articles, financial articles before the town at town meeting. It's kind of like consumer reports, if it's a fair way to look at it, in terms of our fiscal health. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Phil.
Actually, formally, the FinCom is considered the financial advisor to the town meeting body. So they do prepare a report that is a preview of their recommendations, but the idea is the moderator appoints the FinCom, which has 15 people, and they advise the town meeting on the financial aspects of any article. Some articles don't have any financial aspects, but anyways, so they're the formally the financial advisor to the town meeting, appointed by the moderator. So they work very closely with the moderator.
Got it. Thank you. There is, there's an effect, a kind of a timeline from when the article opens, into when the warrant opens, into when hearings begin by the different boards, and into the motion hearing, and then into the beginning of town meeting. And again, town staff is everywhere, and to my understanding, in support of the different hearings, in support of the development of things that are going to be communicated. And so, Shannon, let me just ask you, because as Carmen pointed out, you've been point from staff for town meeting support over the past 2 town meetings. Am I missing something fundamental here?
So the only thing I would add is just also that the select board makes recommendations on almost all articles ahead of town meeting as well, including
Yeah.
financial articles. But they generally tend to wait until the FinCom makes their recommendations on financial articles to make their recommendations. But they do
Yeah.
also have that process before town meeting. That's the
Yeah.
only other thing I would add at this point.
Good, thank you. Can you comment? I see Keith is back on. Keith, I don't know how much of this discussion you got, but let me just bring you back into it, if I may. We're just talking about, basically I'm trying to document, as I catch up to what we all know about town meeting, except me. I'm trying to document my understanding of what's going on at town meeting, to make it easier to sort of talk about where the sticky parts are in terms of operations, and how some changes in the way that we're doing communication for town meeting might have an impact. So it's that. So Keith, I wanted to ask, if I may, given your experience in both Littleton,
Eric,
and
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Keith sent me a message and said that he's rebooting his internet because he's still having audio
Oh.
issues.
Got it. Okay. Bummer. Okay. Fair enough. Well, this will be Keith will be watching this on video going, damn. So, and the replay. So that's what it is. So that's the shape of things, and we'll wait for Keith to be able to join to talk more about that. One of the things that we raised last time was how much does town meeting cost? And Shannon McAndrew was able to provide this report from the CFO. Is that right, Shannon?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So this is just a breakdown. The whole report, which is a 1 page from a spreadsheet, is in the meeting packet. But in terms of sort of what was budgeted, I want to call it a few things. Overall, town meeting cost was budgeted about $100,000, $90K. And the town's budget overall, that's both the town spending and the school spending, is about 100 million. So town meeting costs about one 1/1000th of the overall budget. Equipment rental is significant, right? And I don't know whether this was equipment rental, for sort of 3 nights planned and 1 night contingency, or 5 nights overall. But that's a big chunk of the budget. Technical services, I assume, are related to, and maybe Shannon, are related to, for example, the support of the speech to text subtitling person, and other technical labor services. I don't know.
Yeah, that's correct, because
Yeah.
the AV services has its own line item.
Yeah.
Eric, can
Go
I
ahead.
just ask a question about this budget?
Yeah.
Don't we also have to rent chairs to set up in the gym? And-
That could be other miscellaneous supplies.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also rent the stage. And there's like extra podiums up there and stuff. Those are all,
Yeah.
I would say other miscellaneous supplies.
Shannon, who does the work of arranging all the rentals?
That's done within the town manager's office. So we have technically coordinators for town meeting. I mostly
Yeah.
handle the warrant and the motions and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And then this past year, it was my coworker, Donna McIntosh, who
Sure.
worked on like the contracts
Sure.
and working more with the vendor relations.
Sure.
But that's going to be Andrea Fountain, who's the new executive assistant to the select board for 2025.
And are you off of town meeting for the coming year or
Nope, I am
will
not. I'm
that be-
still
yeah.
doing warrant and stuff.
Oh, cool. Good, thank you. So Carmen pointed out that the printing and post line item here, which is about 26K, likely includes the cost to print and distribute the town report as well. So it's not just the warrant, but the town report as well. Shannon, so roughly how many I mean, you mentioned 2 people. Are you working 100% on town meeting for a couple of months, or how does it, what's the level of work for the town staff in terms of
I would
supporting the prep?
say
Yeah.
the warrant, really starts picking up once it opens, and that timeline this year is going to be at the end of January, and then it's pretty intensive from there. The unique thing about town meeting is that a lot of our neighboring towns all have them at the same time. So really the vendor coordination starts really early. Like, I think we've already sent the date to some of our
Right.
vendors that we typically work with.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of other towns that these same vendors service. So I would say that starts earlier even than when the warrant opens.
Mhm. I'm just thinking. Okay. Any comments or questions about this material? Kristen, I'll just check in with you.
Nope, no questions yet.
Okay. And Keith, can you confirm if you're back online or not?
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thanks. I'm-
Welcome back, and sorry for
Thank
your
you. I
connectivity
missed
issues.
Yeah, I missed about, I just got off of my own committee's call right before, and I think my
Yeah.
commuter expected me to reboot
Bummer.
before a new meeting.
Well, so no harm, no foul. I think what I talked about, I'm not going to do it again, is to talk about the different roles involved in preparing for town meeting and some of their work products. And I think a thing that was very new for me was understanding the role of the town council and the relationship between a warrant article and a motion at meeting. And I was curious, if with your experience in Littleton or your experience in Provincetown, if this picture of preparing for town meeting is substantially different or not, and as well, what perhaps you found to be the sticking points in getting ready for town meeting. What was the things that were hardest to really sort of accommodate?
Sure, thanks. I think what I'd have to say is that the amount of staff resources and support by the town for article sponsors what the level of service provided in Concord far outweighs anything I've seen in other communities I've worked for. Typically, there has not been an incentive to help petitioners write an article or to make sure it's legal. And so I see Concord tends to be a little more forthcoming with support. So
yeah. Does that play out in terms? How does that play out in terms of meeting experience and in towns that don't have that staff support, in terms of presentation quality or the quality of debate and deliberation? I mean, how does it?
Well, it's actually, it's all about legality. And if if it's a petitioned article, it's sometimes viewed as not having come through the appropriate channels.
Sure.
And if whoever wrote it didn't do it legally, that's that's on them and not the town. So that's just sort of an approach.
Sure. I'll say this the wrong way, but that implies in a way that the town of Concord staff support for the warrant preparation and for the motion preparation means that less, I don't know what the right way to say this is, but less, it's like a quality control mechanism. Less junk gets through. The consequences of quote unquote junk getting through are as you said, legal. There are consequences in terms of, I would imagine there are consequences in terms of meeting experience of seeing a lot of fumbling as well when things have not been properly vetted. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think so. That the other plus that I think Concord has is that every article has to go through some, whether petitioned or not, has to go through a public hearing process prior to town meeting.
Right, one
And
hearing
that-
or another, yeah, one hearing
Yeah,
or another
and-
picks it up, yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just, that is so far superior to an article getting all the way to town meeting floor and everyone in officialdom starts looking at each other and says, what is this?
I see.
Because they haven't paid attention to it up until the remaining minutes, because typically such an article is put at the very end of the warrant.
Hmm. Good, thank you. David Allen, member of the public, I see your hand raised and I will recognize you, please.
Just thought it might be useful to note that in Concord, and this reflects 15 years of my experience and more. The first stop is a moderator, and there's a train on down from there. Council is called in if it's needed. Of course, recently, 8 years now, it's been Carmen. She's simply remarkable. Every petitioner knows, if they've been around at all, first you offer to Carmen and get her input on it. And of course, it goes on from there. Thanks.
Good. Good, thank you. Yeah, actually, citizen petitions are very interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit. So again, in terms of understanding the preparation for town meeting, the cost of town meeting, that's what I had. Keith, I know you're thinking about sort of the workflows around communications, and something that's not explicitly said, but that I've been thinking about. I guess we'll come back to this, but it's as if I'll say it this way, if we impose a higher standard for format of communications, right? If there's a higher standard for what goes into a town meeting presentation, or if there's a higher standard in terms of a rubric or, for what goes into sort of the explanatory text around an article, who's going to do that work? And maybe we can come back to that. So I'll move forward into the next sort of discussion topic, which is experiences and insights from communication for town meeting. So I sent an email out today with just a couple of pointers to two town meetings, one Arlington, one Lexington, and these are on the web. Both have a representative town meeting. Arlington has what they call an annotated warrant, which is basically that the clerk is responsible for assembling a packet that contains the select board recommendations, FinCom recommendations, if applicable, planning board recommendations, if applicable, with respect to a specific article. And then those are online, but what the clerk does says that for this article, here's the article, here's some links to the collateral around the article. And that what they do is, because it's representative town meeting, there are 6 to 8 sessions for town meeting over a multi-week period, is that before a given night's articles are going to be addressed, they'll print out the day before sort of the packet the relevant pieces of the packet to go along with that. But you can also see online what the links are. So it can be an all digital experience. And then Lexington has, again, a representative town meeting. And they have off the Lexington town meeting, if you go to Lexington town meeting 24, they have a page with all of the articles. It's a long table with all of the articles. And then one column has, I guess it would be from town meeting video. But then the third column is all links to collateral, again, including select board recommendations and so on. So other towns, do more than just, so to speak, print the warrant, and then do the motions at meeting. I'll say that yeah, that was interesting. I saw a copy of the Arlington warrant, and again, because it's representative town meeting, what goes out to the whole town instead of an informative book is really like an 8-page or 8 or 10-page little booklet that just has the minimal text of the warrant article. No explanation, no context, no nothing. Just this is a list of things. And so that's, I'll say that's sort of, legally correct, of course, but bear notice as to what's going on, what's going to be going on at town meeting. So it's an interesting difference between sort of open town meeting, in this instance, open town meeting, representative town meeting. So I did some thinking about what to know about an article, and from my perspective, three dimensions of information. Tell us what this article is, what it's about. Second, I'd like to know from the petitioner, why this? Why is this article in this moment, right? What's the status quo situation? What's the problem that we're trying to solve with the article, and so on. And then, finally, I'd like to inform our debate. What are pros and cons for this article? And so clearly, not all of this belongs in a rich version of the warrant. Perhaps, perhaps there's a place for it via the town website. Perhaps, maybe our debate is informed maybe at town meeting, or maybe our debate is informed through the channel of the bridge. I don't know. But I think that when I think in my most expansive way about what the town can provide to fully contextualize and fully support an informed debate, these categories of information come to mind for me. And so, in a way, the toughest use case is what sufficiently informs debate for a low information voter, right? Someone is like, I'm going to go to town meeting. I didn't get a chance to look at anything. I'm going to sit down. They're going to put a motion up, or, something up, and I'm going to have to figure out what to do. And for that voter, how can we bring information to point, so to speak, to bear, so that they can be adequately informed as opposed to low informed? Kristen, I see your hand. I'll defer to you, please.
Thank you for preparing all this. It's such a great way to look at it. I guess I'm thinking, I think this is kind of the issue with the length of the meeting. If the first time people are seeing things is at town meeting, then, I think that's something that I'd love for us to be able to do something about. As you pointed out, there's quite a few touch points on the way that, particularly about budgets and things like that. So I guess what I'm thinking is, when we think about, even the presentations, we in the COVID year, the presentations were all online ahead of time. And so I'm hoping that as we're thinking about these things, we can think about how to engage people either early in the process, or how to get them information such that when they're, when they arrive at town meeting, they're ready to, I'm not saying they need to vote on, know how they're going to vote on everything, but the ones that they want to discuss, they're going to be able to, come with their questions and comments and things like that. And maybe the other ones where there's been a lot of time to submit input along the way, particularly budget items, even, bylaws, and a number of things that have had both the public hearing and, all of the public input that has happened along the way to develop the warrant articles. So no, I think would like us to think about in the information, not just what information can people have when they walk in to town meeting, but, what do people need to be informed for those at least several months before then? In what way might that fit into kind of what you're thinking and explaining?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really interesting. I think, in a way, we could look at the beginning of town meeting as the hearing for the given article. We could look at town, not the legal entity.
Even before that. No, but I mean,
that.
even before
Yeah.
that, because by the time that the hearing happens, usually like on the higher interest topics, they've been discussed in those committees. Like, I'm thinking about planning board bylaws, finance committee, setting guidelines, school committee budget and things like that. Like there's been many points. Now, and I guess so related to this, something I see, I think in the Carlisle Mosquito, every week they have like a summary of, these are the 5 things that happened at the school committee meeting or something like that. I don't know that it's necessarily within the scope of this, group to do this, but since we're talking about, information and Keith has, suggested some specific things about, what would be good in the hands of kind of the voters. I'm just wondering if there's other suggestions we can make so that when people arrive to town meeting, it would kind of dovetail with maybe other suggestions that we're making for the efficiency of the time.
I think to me, it's a great insight. I'll get to you in just a second, Phil. I think, in a way, if you walk it back, it comes back to how committees are organizing their work for the public on the town website. So for example, we're at the ZBA for different applications, the ZBA, for significant applications, the ZBA will have a page. So the Riverside Novo was a big development being considered. And they had a ton of stuff. And so there was a page, you could see what was new from the last meeting and so on. It was really, for someone who was trying to understand what the path of this issue, this matter was, it was really great. Right. And then well, that didn't turn into something that went before town meeting, but other projects, I mean, the depot zoning, was a thing where there was a page. And again, a citizen could follow the matter through its development. And so I think you're right that in a way, town meeting is the output of a long pipe. and the idea of engaged, citizens engaged in democracy really is that, we'd like to think about touch point for citizens all the way along that pipe, all the way along that journey. And that so sorry to go off on this, but one of my neighbors who's wiser than I am, it's like, she said, by the time it gets to town meeting, that pie is already baked, right? If you want to be involved in making policy, you go to hearings, you go to meetings, right? And so town meeting, to her, it looks like an approvals activity. And so when we think about improving democracy, when we think about improving communication, I think it's fair to walk all the way back, but I think we need to begin with communication at meeting, communication at hearings, and then I'm very interested in sort of understanding board experiences around communication, but I think that even though it's at the root of the river, as it were, I think we need to sort of walk our way backward first, if that makes sense. Phil, sorry for that. Please.
Sure. So a couple things. First of all, Eric, I think this is a great list of all the sources of information that are available for town meeting. I will tell you, when Parashar gets on, he can elaborate, but I had been working with Parashar to try to get a survey question in to the other towns that we're going to be surveying about sort of sources of information they have to just see what they use. But cool. And then one other thing, and that is, I know that the town of Truro, which is a town of 2,000 people, has a monthly newsletter. It's and so that's where that sort of stream starts. It starts, issues start coming up in the beginning of the year, and they're written about every month. It's put together by the town. It's pushed out to every person in the town. A lot of work for the town staff, I'm sure. Although the newsletter, I think that you can also just submit things like our committee, for example, submit something every month, and it gets pushed to everybody. So I think it at least in Truro, it really informs everybody. It's hard not to know what the issues are going to be at the town meeting because of that newsletter.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Again, because there is a feed supported through both the work of town staff and through the participating committees, there's a feed of what's going on, how matters or issues, I don't know what to call them, right, are working through the respective policy pipelines, then we know when to get engaged. We know where to go get engaged. We know that things are happening. It's not a surprise by the time we get to town meeting. Carmen talked about, in the conversation I had with her, talked about one of the goals of a moderator is not to have surprises at meeting. So that's part of it. Parashar, I'm glad you're able to join. I'll recognize you, please.
Thank you. I just joined on the last slide. And Phil, we did incorporate your question. When I get back later this week, I'm going to consolidate the current information, identify the gaps, and then we'll try to fill in the missing information. I think what you're asking for will probably have to go out and be one of the 2 or 3 questions we'll have to go out and get. But I think and this may be an unfair comment, but I think it behooves us to go back to the survey data, and I'll do this myself, but others, but try to distinguish between our folks can't find the information on committee sites, et cetera. Is that the issue on the various websites, or is it that they don't have time to participate through the process? Because at least in the 5 years that I served on FinCom, there was lots of notices, lots of hearings, right? And even in the last year, we had articles in The Bridge. They were really good about following up and writing stories when we asked them to write the stories.
Sure.
And yet we didn't get a whole lot of participation relative to, the attendance at town meeting when the subject actually came up for vote.
Sure.
We should, I think, be mindful that we don't try to overly complicate the work of the committees if they're already putting information out there.
Mhm.
Right. So that's my only comment, I think. And again, it was a bit unfair. I was only focused on the last slide. So
No, it's all good. And I agree with your comment. I mean, I'll interpret that to say there's almost a chicken and egg problem. Is it that, because the information isn't there, isn't engaging, isn't accessible, people don't participate? I mean, your experience is that we put a lot out and we still didn't get participation. So fair enough.
So,
Yeah.
Eric, can I just give you my 2 cents on this?
Of
I don't
course.
think Joe Q citizens, not too many John Q citizens, go to the trouble of going to committee websites and looking up the latest agenda, the latest report, and so on.
Mhm.
They could, absolutely, but I just don't think they do. So whether it's a school committee, the FinCom, or any other committee. So
Yeah.
I think you have to make it more user-friendly to get that information, that you just
Sure.
can't expect, say, oh, well, the information was available on the website.
Right.
You have to make it more, you have to push it out more aggressively if we really want people to be informed.
Right. So if we
can I just follow up on the comment, Eric? I agree
Sure,
with you,
go for it.
Phil. Right. And a perfect example, I subscribe to a number of different committees to get their agendas. I don't know, you guys probably do too. You get the email, you got to click, it brings you to another website. You got to click again to download. Like, why
Yeah.
can't they just deliver the document?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
completely agree with you, Phil. The current method of pushing information out when people have requested it is
Right.
antiquated, and that needs to be improved. And maybe that helps improve engagement, et cetera. And certainly, it's a pain in the butt to try to even just download an agenda through 5 clicks of the mouse.
It's actually one of the things, and looking at Civic Plus, the CMS that we're using to support the town website, is one of the things I'd like to look at, because it's clunky, right? Too many clicks. I think the question of a town feed is really interesting. Her conversation with me, with Celeste from The Bridge, she said, we can't cover every meeting, right? They don't have the resources for that. And to some degree, these are my words, it's not clear that their readers are interested in every meeting. So there's a bound over here in terms of how much we can do, or how much we should do from the media side. It's interesting to look at different committees and see how long it takes them to get minutes out. So you can always request minutes, right? And they may not be available even though in a pre-approval state, but one can request minutes, but it takes a long time for some committees to get minutes out. So, and then different groups, we've been really, really fortunate with how Minuteman is getting our videos up from our our meetings. They've been coming up pretty quickly. Different committees will have a different timeline for getting their videos posted as well. And so even there, but then you have to go watch a video, right? So the idea of a relatively fresh feed that integrates information across town activities is a nice one. But again, it comes back to, in a way, what does it take to operationalize that? But I don't want to lose sight of that, because I think it really does point to how what happens before town meeting can really complement and improve the experience at town meeting. Keith, I want to give you a chance to comment because you're there, man. So.
Yeah, thanks. And I can bring the perspective of chairing another committee. I'm in my 4th or 5th year as chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. We have no control over when our videos get posted. I'm not aware that any town board does, or unless town boards with staff get them posted. We're at the mercy of the good folks at Minuteman Media, who are
Sure.
very busy.
Yeah.
I have developed the procedure for. I get a constant complaint at housing meetings where the public attends. We have a quarterly housing roundtable where all of the housing groups and the select board and planning board, community preservation committee get together. One of the constant themes we're hearing is no one knows what's going on regarding our topic, housing, and how can there be a better flow of information about what each of our committees is doing. I make it as a practice before, since it's going to be a month before my minutes even get voted on. We only meet once a month. That I have the practice of sending out an email. My committee meeting got over around 6:30. Probably by sometime tomorrow morning, I'll send out an update to our. It's a self-select. It's not a formal distribution list, but it's the
Right.
people that I know follow us, the committee liaisons and committee members, and it'll at least summarize what all the votes were that were taken at my meeting tonight, and when we're going to meet next, and what issues we're dealing with. So the only other way I get information is by attending everybody else's meeting, and the ones
Right.
I miss, waiting for it to get posted online. It's very
Yeah.
time consuming to
Yeah.
find out what's going on, even if you want to know.
Good. Thank you. Shannon, I'm sorry I overlooked you. I'll recognize Shannon McAndrew.
No, that's okay. I think just talking about the website and finding information on the website, we hate the website too. But we're just trying to work with what we have mainly. And it's I know Civic Plus is clunky, and it drives me crazy too that I have to press the download agenda button 4 times before I can actually download an agenda. But we have to work with what we have to some capacity. And I know that our communications manager, Donna, would, like to do some more updating and modernization of the homepage. And I think that's something that every so many years is in our contract with Civic Plus. So I think that's something that Donna would really like to tackle. But also it's just right. It's very difficult keeping up the updating of every committee webpage and stuff, especially when you start talking about committees that don't have designated staff support, because
Right.
they'll sort of wind up just slipping through the cracks. And generally, until someone on the committee emails maybe the town manager's office or something, maybe their page doesn't get updated.
Got it.
So I know, yeah, we would love to improve some of these communications things too. And, that's the same with town meeting presentations being made available more in advance of the meeting. But also part of that is, and maybe this is something that the committee could look into more, is in order to do that, we need all of the stakeholders who are participating in town meeting to meet the deadlines that
Mm.
we're sending them. And that can be really hard. You know, for me to be chasing the town manager and the CFO for a presentation about the budget, etc. You know, we just need everyone to buy in on the deadlines, because I know we want the presentations to be made earlier. And, you know, this year it's 3 days before town meeting and I'm scrambling to link every presentation to the website. Like, that's not how I want to be spending my time in the days before town meeting either.
Yeah, I hear that.
But we just need buy-in on our processes from all the committees and staff people as well.
Good, thank you.
Well, I wonder if that's the recommendation that we can consider, is something about timelines. You know, obviously there's specific timelines that are in either our charter or bylaws for when things need to take place. But, you know, there's always that the staff has to work so hard to get everything done kind of at seeming like towards the end. Particularly if we can move to something where people have to be informed before they arrive to town meeting, so that town meeting can be a little shorter. I wonder if there's, you know, what we will learn about how hard it is to meet deadlines, or, you know, how early we could push deadlines up and still have people meet them and things like that. But I think that's an interesting thing to keep on the table.
I agree as well. Thank you. I think, you know, it's a question, right? Is buy-in a question of awareness? Like, we know when the deadline is? Is it a question of conflicting priorities? Because, you know, categorically, right? I'm town manager. I've got a lot of stuff going on. This presentation is just one of them, and I have a lot of juggling to do. And if I have a little bit of latitude, you know, to slip the presentation, maybe I need to do that. You know, is it a matter of, you know, for some not knowing what to do, right? You know, if I'm a citizen petitioner, do I actually really, is my roadmap really clear for what I need to do? I don't know, right? So I think it's worth trying to unpack it a bit. But I think I agree with you. I think there's an opportunity for us. Does anybody have any comments on this this material beyond what we've talked about? I'm trying to think about what sort of, you know, Leslie is kind of looking at content for pre-town meeting. So she'll see this in video, of course. You know, Keith, I think you're thinking about process. Let me come back to the question I raised earlier, which is, if we do have a rubric, so it's a couple of things, right? I mean, so Shannon talked about, you know, in her role for town meeting support, being the one who has to go chase people down to get their presentations in, and, you know, maybe a better deadline or a process with different buy-in would help that. Carmen has talked about how, you know, she'll look at presentations not for semantics, but for clarity, for accessibility issues, for factualness. She'll look at presentations for people from citizen petitioners before they go out to meeting, as you know, to help them in effect. Different towns do that differently. If we do want to, you know, say, look, here's a standard for communicating about your article. Here's a template page on the town website for your article. You need to provide this information. Here's your point of contact. That a change in that workflow implies effort, right? It implies somebody needs to support that. What again, in your experience with Littleton, with a Provincetown or elsewhere, what surfaces for you as implications of trying to be a little stricter, a little about what or a little more definite about what communication formats are like?
Well, the information issue that I was in charge of was of the town departments. And so and they all, and in Provincetown, they all work for me.
Mhm.
In Littleton, they work for a whole bunch of separately elected people, but it was a quality control function to make sure that that staff was producing the information that was needed on deadline. And you know, I saw, for example, the if I read it correctly, if town council's only looking at the motions later, that's different. I would have my draft warrant articles. I usually wrote all the warrant articles and would have those reviewed by town council prior to the select board inserting them on the warrant. So that that helped us reduce the amount of new information coming up when we were simply writing motions
Got it.
later. So anyway, it's a quality control function for the town government. And I think the difference here is that far much more work is done by volunteer committees than in the communities that I work for. There was not that there was that much more staff, it might have been fewer committees. But that the workload was getting done
Mhm.
by staff with policy direction from committees.
All right, thank you. Shannon, I still see your hand up. Is that something new or is that from before?
That is from before, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Phil, I see your hand though. Please.
Yeah, so I just think it's human nature that things are gonna get done at the last minute. We should urge everybody to get things done on deadlines so that there's plenty of time to get it out, but it's gonna happen that it gets done at the last minute. Especially as Keith says, we're all volunteer committees. People just can't get it done.
Yeah.
But what I think would help is if we just make a method of communication available for all of our committees to post something, and it's up to them. They can get a full presentation of what they're going to say at town meeting, or they can get 3 bullet points about what the issues are. But whatever it is, make it available to them so they can, and make it easy for them to get that information out.
This is
The more the better.
This is the idea of pushing something out on the town feed, as it were.
Yeah, but
Yeah, okay.
but also just we could set up, and our recommendation could be, 6 months from now, all presentations should be in 3 months before town meeting.
I see, yeah.
I don't think that's realistic. I think, and my experience in pretty much every presentation I've ever done at town meeting is it gets amended right up until
Right,
either the night before or the afternoon of.
right.
So I think we just have to make it easy for the committees to get that information out.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to have a tech solution, right? Good, thank you. So, there's one other thing I wanted to mention. And again, this relates to citizen petitions as well. So the subject of a town meeting action, right? I didn't know, form of action. So there are a few things. A change to bylaws, zoning changes are like bylaws, go through bylaws. Home rule legislation, where we're authorizing a select board to do something for us, like ostensibly, asking the legislature to approve a remote town meeting home rule petition. That would be one of those. Adoption, but also it comes the other way too, where the state produces local option legislation and we may choose to pick it up or not. Budget appropriations, the FinCom, are huge through, as reviewed through FinCom. Borrowing, where we commit the town, so budget appropriations are for the coming year, if I'm saying it correctly. borrowing commits, commits the town to future debt, time out, time beyond, buying or selling land and advisory resolutions. And so what's really interesting to me is that a citizen petition could propose any of these with 10 votes, with 10 signatures to get a warrant article in the warrant. It's funny to me that the easiest ones to deal with as a voter, citizen petitions that are advisory resolutions are a lot easier to think about and to deliberate on. Many towns in their advice around procedures for producing and moving a citizen petition along say, go work with the appropriate committee. If you have a citizen petition, find the committee and go work with them. And that maybe even, you don't need the petition if the committee is on board with what you want to do. But that, again, going back to, I'm sorry, I forget who, but that it was Keith, that a poorly worded warrant article creates a mess. Getting help with the wording of a warrant article through a citizen petition is also really useful. Different towns will offer some support, others don't. So citizen petitions are, I think, an essential part of open town meeting or town meeting. At the same time, they're really high variance. They can be really messy. And this is a case where, perhaps a clear pathway for citizen petitions. We already have a lot of support for this. I mean, again, you go talk to the moderator, you'll get some help. But a clear pathway for how my citizen petition around borrowing, God forbid, right? That's complicated. How to identify where my petition would land, who to talk to about it, how to work it through a process. That kind of context, I think, might be helpful. I think, to ground that, though, I would go back and look at a few town meetings worth of citizen petitions and judge in a subjective way, what were the really nicely structured ones? What were the easy ones? What were the hard ones? And see whether or not this is a real problem. But again, I think about the kinds of actions, being clear about for a given article, what this action's about. And again, understanding how citizen petitions can really sort of collide with the complexity of the warrant and motion development process. Parashar, I see your hand, please.
Yeah, so I think it's good to lay out what you've done in terms of types of actions. I do urge us to be cautious about trying to address every single hypothetical possibility. If memory serves me, citizen petitions, at least since I've lived here in Concord, have generally either been around bylaws, advisories, or resolutions.
Yeah.
I don't really recall ones where citizens are actually proposing appropriation article or borrowing or land. So, for us to sort of talk about and figure out where to go for all those for citizens, we don't have a lot of time. Let's focus our effort on the most common situations and address those and not try to hit every potential hypothetical. Because frankly, if citizen wants to borrow money for something, they're gonna have to talk to the CFO and the town manager, and either they can be dissuaded or they can write a poorly worded article. The finance committee, select board, and others involved will probably recommend tabling it, and the thing's dead anyway, right?
Right. Is it worth wasting all that time? Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Fair point. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so I'd like to conclude our discussion of thinking about structuring communication. Any last words on this topic before Parashar? I want to move into just an update from you on the reaching out to other towns. Let me give our public an opportunity to comment or ask questions on this topic as well. Anything from the public?
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, recognize David Allen.
On this latter point, I think most of us are aware that town meetings now set up at the beginning so that This is really aimed at proposed amendments to motions, but it reflects more largely. It's set up so that if town meeting participant wants to spend money, they got to tell you how. It's either got to come out of here or it's got to have some source.
Mhm.
I haven't had the experience of a citizen petition that affected money. Doesn't mean there couldn't be one, although I think Parrish
Mhm.
right about focusing firepower where there is payoff. I will notice one thing. Kristen triggered me. You know something that, and this is in the end a detail, but still, to have a document accessible some means or another and widely available that says to those who might write a citizen petition, here are the steps that you go through. Most especially at the beginning, submit it to the moderator, because that should be your starting point, but there are steps after that as well. In the end, this is a detail about procedure still. I think Krista was quite right. Thanks so much.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I'll observe Wayland, a few other towns all have kind of the same document around what to know about making a citizen petition. Like by same, I mean, they all come from the same root, you know. So it's interesting. I think the stuff is out there, but I think, yeah, I think there's an opportunity there.
But doesn't Carmen put one out every year? I thought there is a guide if you want to do.
Oh, there
Citizen
might
petition
be. Yeah,
on,
there might
I
be.
think it's there on the town meeting website.
Yeah, I'll double check.
Yeah, we should confirm this. I'm 99% sure.
So
Yeah.
my bad if I've missed it. And you might want to take a look and be sure.
Yeah. We'll get it. So Parashar, I want to move on to just I didn't make an explicit agenda item, but it sounded like we had a little bit of discussion, or at least an update on the work that you're doing around looking at what peer communities are doing for town meeting.
Yeah, and Eric, I didn't get a chance to look at this material. Were you able to put in the slides that we had modified?
Yeah, they are in the attachment. Yes.
So if you can just scroll, I'm on an iPad, so can't share.
Yeah, hang on. Give me just a second. All right, I'm gonna stop presenting this.
Yeah. So while you do that, let me just provide context. So just to refresh everybody's memory, right? I think I can't remember whether it was last week or 2 weeks ago. At a prior meeting, I sort of outlined potential questions to ask, identified some potential towns, got input on both questions and on towns from the rest of the committee. I then took, and it's a slower process than I would have envisioned, so I apologize. But I identified the towns that already submitted answers to these questions in the 2022 survey. And identified also the questions that we wanted to ask that are in that survey. So my proposed approach, as soon as this comes up, as you'll see, is to, in essence, very simple database that basically says, well, here are the questions that we want to ask. Reviews based on input. Yep, there we go. So if we can go to the slot towns to review.
Is this legible enough for everybody?
Yeah, I think you got to make it a little bit. That's good.
You can make it bigger, but we can also look in the packet.
Yeah, so you can see on the towns to review slide, we had identified some of these towns as like ours. Some of them have also conducted a recent ATM survey, and some of them also replied in the survey. And so my notion is going to go through the survey, go through their studies that we have, answer the questions that we're interested using those methods. Obviously, there's going to be gaps. For example, Bedford, we might have to actually just go put the survey out to them. The next set of slides identifies the questions I think that we identified, and you can see color-coded which ones are in the survey and which ones are likely on the website, either state website or their website. So we'll gather that information. And then 7 and 8, for example, on this page will require going back out to the towns and asking questions. I think 9, Phil, is a question you had asked. That's in the survey. I'll have to take a look at, just make sure it's reported the way you want it, which I think it is, but I'll do that and then come back and basically show folks kind of where we land. And then, as I said, go back to to those towns, get the missing information. I think we'll have a pretty good picture, hopefully by the end of August, if not sooner. Answer the questions that we're hoping to ask.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think my comment to you earlier was just I would suggest also going out to the websites directly and just see what
Yeah.
they have. And I think part of that is getting the information, but part of it is too, I think, developing a subjective judgment about just are these good websites? Are they well? So I have a friend who's actually a clerk in another town who we're talking about they're thinking about retiring at some point and where they want to move. And they're like, I've been looking at the websites for the towns to see if the towns have their act together, right? So it's actually looking at different civic websites to gauge just that. So I'm not saying you do that. I'm not talking about retiring to someplace, but I think to get a kind of a tactile sense as to sort of what's going on as well would be helpful. I'm impressed by Lexington, for example. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Good. Any other discuss? Yeah, go ahead.
I was actually going to ask Keith a question. Keith, you said Littleton does a lot of their work through staff. And I'm just kind of curious, and you just mentioned Lexington, Eric.
Yeah.
I have no clue as to whether Concord is staffed proportionate to the size / work of what it takes to run Concord and how that looks compared to other towns. I don't know of any benchmarks that would enable us to do this. We thought a little bit about it on the finance committee last year as we were trying to figure out strategic plans for the town and what we could use for benchmarks. But if anyone else knows of anything like that, I think that might just be useful information at some point.
Is that Parashar? Is it something? Sorry, Keith. Is that something like staff headcount to town budget or a ratio like that? Or
Well, I maybe, but again, I know enough to be dangerous because you can still have a large budget, and if it's all geared to schools and you don't have an expansive park system or a rec department,
right.
I mean, it's just kind of hard to get your hand around it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Philip, I see your hand up, so I'll recognize you, please.
Yeah, so I remember from my days on FinCom that there is a place that collects that sort of information, Parashar. And I don't know if when it was before you got on the committee, but I remember us looking at it to look at school budgets, and it compared school budgets, but it has every town in the Commonwealth. And it's a like semi-commercial website, but you can just log on and see how different towns, how much do towns spend on different things.
Yeah, no, the spending information's there, Phil. The question is proportion to what, right? You can get spending, you can get town employees, but the level of services is challenging and the outcomes are challenging. You can go to the school, like the school's a perfect example, right? You can go to school State Department website and compare actual outcomes, whether it's SAT, ACTs, number of student teacher ratio, all that kind of stuff. There doesn't seem to be anything like that for municipal government. As far as I could tell in Massachusetts, on the state website, MMA, I think the one you're thinking of might be ClearGov or clear.gov or something.
Yes,
But
that's
they
it.
don't have
Yeah,
outcomes. That's the issue.
Yeah.
that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, outcomes are funny that way, right? There's not an election necessarily validating or correcting the work of the the town.
And that's why
Yeah.
I think I think it would be helpful in this case, before we pile on a whole lot of things for Shannon and others in the town to do relative to this process, to see are we staffed to even do that in an appropriate manner? Because
Mhm.
otherwise, we're just gonna be piling on and making the situation worse.
Yeah, fair point. Carmen, said that one of the things that can kind of sneak in is in a citizen petition or otherwise is, oh, we should do this thing, right? We should get a new electric bus, right? She didn't say that, but hypothetically. But with that, we also need to get staff to maintain that bus or retrain staff to maintain that bus. And so things that we think are easy or great or wonderful also entail commitments to future spending, perhaps through salaries, perhaps otherwise.
Yeah, and
Shannon,
I'm
yeah.
not talking about the substance, Eric, to be clear.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the processes that we're thinking of designing or redesigning.
Got it.
Those,
Got it.
that's what I'm talking about right now, but I agree with you on the substance too.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Shannon McAndrew, I will recognize you, please.
Yeah, what I can comment on is that I'm very much your designated staff support on this committee, and for things that you all want support with while you're forming recommendations, while you're looking into reports, I am absolutely here and ready to take on work for you guys. But then, right, I think also Parashar is also saying something different, where if these are things down the line that are also going to be implemented, you're also trying to account for staff support for that. But I just wanted to make it really explicit that if you guys need a hand with other things while you're making recommendations, I am here.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Parashar, I'm going to conclude this piece then and move on. I want to backtrack to the agenda, which is no longer up. Now that we have a quorum of the committee available, I'd like for us to take up the question of approving two sets of minutes. First, the question of approving minutes from our July 2nd meeting. Those minutes are available in the packet. I prepared them. I don't really have any discussion about them. So I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes of July 2nd, 2024.
Keith, I see a second from you. Thank you. Again, any discussion over the minutes at this point? July 2nd?
Eric, do we have what's our quorum? What's our committee size? Is it 9 or 10?
We're nine,
9.
so we're
Okay,
nine,
never
so
mind. Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
I'll
good,
second
good.
it.
Good question. At this point, I'll take a vote to approve the minutes if there's no additional discussion. I will poll then. Parashar Patel, do you approve?
Yep.
Keith Bergman, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Kristen Haggerty, do you approve?
Yes.
And Eric Moore, aye. So we have unanimously approved the minutes from July 2nd. Moving on to the minutes from July 9th. Again, I prepared these. I have nothing to really say about them. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of July 9th.
Second, please.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Keith. Any discussion of these minutes? No
Nope.
discussion. Vote to approve. I'll poll. Keith Bergman, please.
Aye.
Parashar Patel, please.
Aye.
Kristen Haggerty, please.
Yes.
Phil, I think I forgot you again.
I approve.
Thank you. Did you get a vote on the second as well?
I did, but you had enough.
Okay, good. And Eric Moore, aye. So the minutes from July 7th are also approved unanimously. Thank you. So let me think for just a second. We don't have any other business. I wanted to check in on terms of timing for our next meeting. Nominally, we're meeting every 2 weeks. And my question is, recognizing it's late July as well, do we feel that we'll have enough to talk about for a meeting in 2 weeks in terms of progress and questions? Or should we push out our next meeting to 4 weeks from now?
It wouldn't break my heart if you push it out. And I do worry a little bit about burning this committee out
Hmm.
because it's going to be a long year,
Mhm.
and it's August. It'll be August.
I
Any
think
other
it's a good idea
comments?
to go, yeah, 4 weeks, because that way, if Parshar is going to get some data, if that's going to take some time, and
Okay.
we don't need that data in 2 weeks' time for sure. So.
Okay. Okay.
Four
Keith?
weeks is fine.
Okay, so our next meeting of this subcommittee will be 4 weeks from tonight. I don't know what date that is. I'll figure it out and I'll communicate that. But 4 weeks from tonight for this subcommittee. Thank you. And so that said, the next meeting of the experiences, the deliberation and experience subcommittee, the daytime one, will be next Tuesday, July 23rd. Karitari, the clerk, has agreed to join that meeting to talk about data available to give us a sense of participation and a representation, to talk about the nuts and bolts of putting a survey out to the whole town. And I'll ask her, because we'll have her, I'll ask her a little bit about just how the role of the clerk's office and putting communications out for town meeting. So that's a week from today during the afternoon. That agenda will go out tomorrow, and then the packet will go out on Monday. And anybody's welcome to join that, of course. If you can't make it, don't worry about it. We'll see a video. And if you have any questions for Kari, please communicate them to me, and I'll make sure that she gets them before the meeting, so that we can be as productive as possible then. I'll pause. Any comment from the public at this stage in the meeting before we move to closing?
Thanks. Quickly, Eric.
Yeah.
The discussion has been about data from the towns. I previously had suggested, among other things, because eventually maybe asking the question, should we become representative town? I strongly suggest that the data be separated into 2 buckets between the towns that are representative and the towns that are open. But also because since they're quite different institutions, I think it matters to be careful in that separation. If I could also, to go back to Parshar's initial intervention here, in which he reflected on his experience with FinCom and the challenge he put so well. The information is out there, but who the hell was going to come get it anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Could I, and of course we've talked about this not the first time, could I use that to divide between push on the one side, push information,
Mm-hmm.
FinCom, but not just FinCom, pushing information out, and on the other side, pull. That's to say, an interest amongst Concordians for this. And of course, going back to the beginning of the annual town meeting year, which starts in July or something like that. I've said more than once, it's not the sort of thing that there's any obvious step to be taken to given Concordians, as I put it recently, so that they feel like democracy is not a spectator sport, but want to once again put it before the considerations here. What steps might be taken to get some more pull? Thanks so much.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
I
I think it's a fundamental question, right? That anyone who wants to make change needs to answer. Anyone who wants to put, from my experience, putting a product out in the market, to answer the question of, to your customer, to your citizen, to your public, why should I care? It's not a, I think you should, it's a civic obligation or whatever. But, selfishly, why should I, as a voter, as a citizen, why should I care? I don't know. It's the argument we need to make, though. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna Without objection, I'm going to conclude the meeting now. Thank you for your contributions tonight. Keith, I see your hand. Are you just waving by? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good night, everyone. And
Bye-bye.
this subcommittee will talk
Good
again in
night.
a month. All right. Thank you. All right. Good night.
Bye.